Good afternoon. It's Wednesday, July 24. I'm Herman Green with your midday news. For those of you watching online on onespotmedia.com, a very special welcome to you. A circular from the Ministry of Finance and Planning has shown that ministers of government can be issued a government-funded credit card. The matter came up for discussion in the House of Representatives following questions raised by the parliamentary opposition about the appropriateness of a credit card being issued to former Education Minister Ruel Reid. The circular, updated in 2009 and located on the ministry's website, states that a card referred to as an individual credit card should be issued to only ministers of government, permanent secretaries, heads of departments, and chief executive officers of executive agencies and public bodies. For the acquisition of a credit card for a minister, the permanent secretary must obtain the written approval of the financial secretary. The ministry has also provided guidelines for approval, which include the name and post of the accounting office responsible for monitoring and reporting on the use of the credit card and the name and person authorized to use the card. Speaking at this morning's post-cabinet press briefing, Acting Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Dr. Grace McLean, outlined when approval was granted for the issuance of a card to Mr. Reid.
An approval that was given on September 29, 2016 from the Ministry of Finance, giving the former minister the approval to be the holder of this credit card.
She added that the ministry has a monitoring system.
There is a monitoring system that the ministry has in place. The monitoring system means that once the credit card is used, the bills are submitted. There is a reconciliation that is done with the bills that are provided from the bank. This is checked off by the principal financial officer. She ensures that the limit on the card is not exceeded, and she will replenish based on the limit as is necessary.
It has also stipulated the credit card limit in both Jamaican and U.S. currency. For the local single currency card, the limit must not be more than $250,000, and for an international currency card, the limit should not surpass $2,500 US. The Auditor General's performance audit report into the operations of the Ministry of Education was released yesterday afternoon. Our news team has been going through the report, and Anthony Lugg details some of the findings.
Among the Auditor General's findings, the Caribbean Maritime University. It said, despite warnings from National Contracts Commission, the Ministry of Education entered into design and build contract with the Caribbean Maritime University for construction works at 9 schools. This, the report noted, without following required control and due procedure to enable receipt of value for money. As at July this year, the Auditor General said the Education Ministry made payments for works at the 9 schools totaling $171 million. With proposed contract variations submitted by CMU to the ministry, the contract sum is expected to increase by $59 million or 27% to $277 million. The original contract sum of $218 million. The Auditor General said the CMU commenced undertaking the variation works without the required approvals from the Ministry of Education. According to the Auditor General, the ministry bypassed the due diligence of the Procurement Committee and further breached the procurement guideline by its failure to obtain the approval of the NCC for 7 of the contracts based on values. Ministry of Education, Youth and Information also bypassed the requirement to obtain the requisite approvals from the local municipal authorities and the Jamaica Fire Brigade in order to ensure that buildings meet the established safety standards. All the construction works exceeded the contractual deadline. The AG said the Ministry of Education must urgently put in place appropriate systems to enable better coordination between procurement and stock management to facilitate time planning for contract award to benefit from greater economic savings through competitive bidding. Meanwhile, the AG also pointed to deficiencies in inventory management and monitoring of textbooks and furniture, resulting in inefficient distribution and buildup of unused items. Anthony Lugg, TVJ News.
Meanwhile, opposition spokesman on education, Ronald Thwaites, has expressed disbelief at the irregularities pointed out in the Auditor General's performance audit report on the Education Ministry. At Wednesday's post-cabinet press briefing, Minister with responsibility for the education portfolio, Carl Samuda, sought to explain the $277 million in contracts with the Caribbean Maritime University for school refurbishings.
But in many of the instances, what we found was the condition of the facilities that were to be repaired were so dilapidated and threatened the safety of the occupants of the buildings. In some instances, they were just on the verge of collapsing on the children. So swift action had to be taken. That does not mean that it was devoid of the possibility of engaging the proper process.
Mr. Thwaites says while he may understand the need for the CMU to be engaged, the whole situation is unacceptable.
The procedure and the scope of the arrangement, however, was obviously rife for corruption and should never have been allowed. It appears that within the Ministry of Education, and I can't believe that nobody else in government knew about it, people were allowed to do exactly as they please. This has to do with all of the credit cards, the corruption, etc., involving CMU as well. And there was no check on it. Nobody knew what was going on. Permanent secretary, financial officers, members of cabinet, prime minister. I can't believe that.
Meanwhile, Minister with Portfolio Responsibility for Education, Carl Samuda, says the ministry does not have the right to interfere with the operations of the Edna Manley College of the Visual and Performing Arts. His comments follow the alleged sexual harassment of a student of the college by a lecturer. Speaking at this morning's post-cabinet press briefing, Mr. Samuda said the ministry can only seek to intervene and provide suggestions as the school is run by a board.
As Minister of Government, and I don't even think the Permanent Secretary has the authority to implant ourselves on the management of Edna Manley. Once we detect that there are deficiencies that rise to the level of great concern, and we can intervene by convening a meeting with the board. But we give the board, under the structure, the authority to act on behalf of the ministry. As recently as coming here this morning, I spoke to the chairman of the board, and a letter is en route. I don't know if you've gotten it yet. She has sent a letter outlining certain findings and so on, and we will act on their recommendation.
Meanwhile, clarification from Mr. Samuda about documents which were shredded upon the former minister's departure from the ministry. The opposition People's National Party suggested previously that the documents related to the Caribbean Maritime University, CMU, were destroyed when Ruel Reid left that office. But when quizzed in Parliament yesterday, Mr. Samuda rejected the claim.
The Permanent Secretary, Acting Permanent Secretary, acting on the instructions of the Cabinet Secretary, was advised, consistent with the regulations, to destroy all documents relating to the cabinet decisions that were in the possession of the former minister in the office. And those were destroyed consistent with what happens every time a minister is removed or leaves a ministry.
He also explained the process, but the opposition still had questions.
It's a very detailed process, and it is certified and signed off by members of the security of the ministry and various levels of civil servants who are charged with that specific responsibility. There were no other documents destroyed anywhere in the Ministry of Education.
Can the minister confirm whether officials from FID and CTOC who would have commenced an investigation at the ministry were, one, gave authority for those documents to be destroyed, and were present when those documents were destroyed?
First of all, FID cannot instruct the ministry, and you should know better than that. They were not present. It is not their business, and I'll tell you better, you can't just take up a cabinet document and take it out of the room. If you take it out of the room and you're found with it, you go to prison. Understand that? So these documents are carefully managed.
And we now take a break here on the Midday News, but stay with us. More stories after these messages. Welcome back, continuing the news. Pressure is mounting on the government to give a more comprehensive statement on the recent agreement with a private company to conduct deep seabed mining. The Jamaica Environment Trust, JET, is pushing for a firm stance to be taken and more information to be given. The agitation follows yesterday's protest outside the International Seabed Authority in downtown Kingston by representatives of JET and several other groups, including international environmental group Greenpeace. It's reported that Cabinet has approved deep seabed mining through a company called Blue Minerals Jamaica. Speaking yesterday on Beyond the Headlines, CEO of JET, Susan Stanley, claimed that efforts to get more information were unsuccessful.
It would be good for, the information that was released to the media was very limited in March. As I said, we tried to get more information. We did come upon this roadblock. We've tried to get further details, but, the overwhelming response has just kind of been, it's a confidential agreement. So, we said, give us some information at least, so we can have a better understanding of why we've entered into this agreement and, some of the implications. But there hasn't been much forthcoming there.
Among other things, JET wants details of the agreement on how the operations will be carried out and the implications for the marine environment. Educational psychologist Dr. Alison Cross says Jamaica's move to implement PEP was a step in the right direction. She says a major part of developing the minds of children at that age is to support their cognitive development and how they interact socially. Now, Dr. Cross says parents need to also foster relationships with their children's teachers. She was speaking at a recent forum on life after PEP put on by Victoria Mutual Wealth. Prosecutors say in coming days they expect to receive DNA results which should help their probe of the recent sexual assault cases in Portmore St. Catherine. They made the disclosure yesterday after attorney Vincent Wellesley, who is representing Shadane Harris, raised the issue again before the St. Catherine Parish Court. Prosecutors expect the DNA results in at least one of the cases under investigation. Mr. Harris was arrested as the prime suspect in the sexual assault of more than a dozen women. He has since been charged with 3 counts of burglary and wounding with intent. In one of the alleged home invasions, he's accused of stabbing a female bank employee 5 times. Yesterday, investigators submitted statements that Mr. Harris's fingerprints were found at the locations. Now, they are to submit the forensic report at his next court date, which is on September 19. And time now for a preview of what's coming up in this evening's Health Report.
In the next edition of the Health Report, we look at corrective, also known as plastic surgery.
I think they need to realize that even though most of these surgeries are done as a day case, meaning you don't admit to the hospital or you only spend one night in hospital, these are significant procedures and require significant periods of rest and recovery. Because people feel that because we are not admitted to hospital or for any significant period of time, the surgery can't be that serious.
That's the Health Report this evening in Primetime News. And now for today's Healthy Living tip. People who are considering cosmetic surgery need to weigh their options carefully. Choose a reputable surgeon and check in their credentials. After obtaining the surgeon's opinion, make your own decisions and resist being persuaded to opt for something you did not previously want. Get full information about the procedure and weigh up all the pros and cons beforehand. And be aware of any risks and limitations.
We go down to news in sports. Excelsior High's Kirk McKenzie has been named captain of Jamaica's under-19 cricket team ahead of the upcoming regional youth tournament to be held in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. McKenzie, who is one of the top scorers in the local under-19 competition, is looking forward to leading the country's next generation of cricketers.
I'm very confident. I think the team is balanced, a good mixture of all-rounders and batsmen, so I think we'll do well in that tournament. Just be a bit more patient, and those pitches is a bit slow, so you can't really rush the cricket. I think we'll do well because the players have really learned to play on those type of pitches, so we'll do well.
Team manager Gibbs Williams expects the unit to do well at the upcoming tournament, having had an extended preparation period.
Before I say what I've seen, I'm very excited about the format of the competition this year. We'll be playing limit overs cricket, and that's our forte. We in Jamaica, we play at the schoolboy level, we play one-day cricket, and we are very, very happy about that. What I've seen this year is a level of excitement and camaraderie that I've not seen in youth teams over the last 3-4 years. So that makes me very optimistic and excited.
The full squad reads Kirk McKenzie, Ricardo McIntosh, Daniel Beckford, Xavier Burton, Christopher Green, Andre Morgan, O'Dane Thompson, Tyan Jarrett, Andre Blake, Michael Thompson, Andre Smiley, Matthew Comrie, Lennox Simpson, and Ricardo Thompson. The team is coached by Terence Cork. The team will have its final practice game on Wednesday against the Jamaica Scorpions before leaving on Friday for the July 25 to August 10 competition. And that wraps up the Midday News. I'm Herman Green. Join us at 7 for Prime Time News. On behalf of the News Sports and Production teams, good afternoon.